We live in a world just overflowing with information,
Yeah.
and it can feel like, well, a lot, overwhelming sometimes. But what if there was a way to really get informed, to dive deep into important stuff without getting totally swamped? That's what we try to do here. And today we're taking a deep dive into something really subtle, but it has such a huge impact: character assassination. Specifically, how it plays out in families, especially where narcissistic individuals are involved.
Yeah, it's such a critical topic. We're going to be looking at how this specific kind of manipulation, it can really change how someone sees themselves. And often it plants the seeds for pretty significant anxiety, especially social anxiety. It can shape their whole life, often starting really young.
Right. So our mission today is to, well, unpack how this works, this kind of hidden psychological abuse. We want to uncover the signs, because they're often missed, and really explore the long-term effects on the person targeted. Because this isn't just about, throwing labels around. It's about understanding a pattern of behavior that's maybe hard to spot, but it's very real for a lot of people. Okay, so let's maybe start by unpacking that term. Character assassination. What does that actually mean in this family context? It sounds serious, more than just like a casual insult.
Oh, absolutely. It's way more than that.
Yeah.
It's when someone is deliberately painted with traits they just don't have.
Yeah.
I mentioned someone being consistently portrayed as, say, mean or difficult or just really negative, or maybe having, an unpleasant way about them. But the key thing is the narcissist knows these things aren't true about the target. And often there's this weird sort of switcheroo happening. The narcissist projects their own negative stuff. Maybe they're the mean-spirited one or argumentative onto the person they're targeting, the scapegoat.
Right, that projection thing. And the source material gives some really clear examples of how this actually happens, like in real life situations. It's described as very calculated, done over and over, and totally on purpose. Like, picture a family get-together, maybe with guests over. The narcissist might use really subtle tactics, maybe sarcasm, or they might try to bait the target into an argument.
Exactly. And they do it so cleverly.
Yeah, so that to anyone watching, you, the target, just look difficult, or maybe like a sour puss, as the source puts it, sulking or unapproachable. Meanwhile, the narcissist's part in creating that situation, it's hidden, very subtle.
And this leads us straight into that concept of the scapegoat in these dysfunctional family setups.
Yeah.
That's the person in the family who's basically, well, appointed to be the problem.
Compointed, yeah, like it's a role they're given.
It is. And a narcissist, often a parent, maybe a grandparent, someone with influence, they systematically single out this person.
Yeah.
They work to make them look like the flawed one, the difficult one to everyone else. Aunts, uncles, cousins. A classic example is like a narcissistic mother making it seem like her child just can't get along with the rest of the family.
Yeah.
That they're the source of friction.
Okay, and here's where it gets, I think, really insidious. The source mentions this process often starts super early, like when the target is just a child or maybe a teenager, is the idea that this is actually intentional to sort of program them, to set them up for anxiety, specifically social anxiety, and they're older.
Yes. I mean, the sources strongly suggest that's the underlying dynamic. The aim seems to be to create that vulnerability, that anxiety.
Yeah.
And what makes it even worse is that the narcissist often pulls other family members into it.
Recruits them.
Kind of, yeah. They recruit others,
Sure.
maybe consciously or unconsciously, to join in. It forms this sort of gang mentality, all targeting the scapegoat, the black sheep, and this bombardment, coming from all sides. It's incredibly unfair and deeply damaging psychologically.
Wow.
And you see the direct link then between this constant character assassination and the development of social anxiety.
Wow.
It makes sense, right? It leads to the target becoming, well, often timid, maybe shy.
Uncomfortable in groups.
Very uncomfortable around crowds,
Yeah.
Avoiding parties, social events, just wanting to withdraw. They talk about feeling small, very self-conscious.
Like everyone's watching them, judging them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that translates into a real lack of confidence,
Yeah.
No self-belief. It can even hit their schoolwork. Grades might start failing because the social anxiety is just too much to handle in a classroom setting.
So it's like the narcissist is literally, as the source puts it, downloading programming into their subconscious. Is that the idea? Setting up this core damage?
That's a really good way to put it. That's the essence of it. They install these false beliefs. Things like, I'm a loser, nobody really likes me, people won't love me no matter what I do.
Oh, that's brutal.
It is, and it often turns inward into self-criticism. I'm too fat or too skinny, I'm unattractive, I'm too weird, I'm just different. And ultimately, this deep-seated belief that people just won't accept me for who I am.
God.
The result It's tragic, really. The person grows up often not having a clue who they actually are.
Yeah.
What are their real values, their priorities?
Uh,
They're less likely to reach out, to connect, to figure themselves out through interacting with others. They don't feel confident in just
yeah.
being.
Yeah.
They become who the narcissist told them they were.
Which is just so
It
sad.
really is.
And this systematic murdering or wiping out, as the source calls it, of someone's true self, it goes on for years. And often it's horribly effective from the narcissist's point of view.
Devastatingly effective. And what's really tough is that even if the person manages to leave that environment, leave home, that programming, it's still running in their subconscious. It doesn't just disappear. They're left often quite traumatized. There's real work to do to heal from that.
Right. It's not just water under the bridge.
Not at all. And think about why this kind of abuse is so insidious, why it often flies under the radar. Outsiders usually don't see it. The narcissist is typically very skilled at keeping it quiet, on the hush-hush, as the source says.
So you might have someone looking in from the outside, maybe at that family gathering we talked about, and they see the scapegoat, the target, and they look, well, maybe they're frowning or seem sad or withdrawn, pouting even, and the outsider just thinks, huh, what's wrong with that person?
Exactly. They have no idea.
No idea that this person is actually feeling deeply depressed, incredibly anxious, that they're being, like the source says, tormented on a psychological and an emotional and a spiritual level. All they see is the surface behavior, which looks negative or antisocial.
Right. Because the narcissist deliberately sets it up that way.
Right.
They engineer the situation so they don't get exposed. They don't look like the bad guy. The focus stays on the target's reaction, not the cause.
Okay. So, pulling this all together, what's the main takeaway here? It seems like character assassination, especially by a narcissistic parent or caregiver, isn't just occasional cruelty. It's this systematic, really subtle, but profoundly damaging form of abuse. Psychological, emotional. It can literally warp someone's identity, their sense of self, and sow the seeds for a lifetime of social anxiety. It's not just the words, right? It's the actions, the whole setup designed to program this false reality deep inside someone.
That sums it up perfectly. And it's so important to recognize this because it is a very, very real situation in many families dealing with dysfunction.
Yeah.
It's an often overlooked form of abuse, but its impact on children growing up in that environment is immense. It's real.
So thinking about all this, how this subtle manipulation, especially in those really foundational family relationships, can just fundamentally mess with someone's core sense of self. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? It raises a question, maybe for you listening to think about, if we had a deeper awareness of these hidden dynamics, these kinds of subtle power plays, how might that change how we see people? People who seem withdrawn or maybe lack confidence. Could we learn to look past that surface appearance? Could we see the deeper, maybe unseen struggles that might actually be shaping their lives? Something to consider.